There was a hair in my book. Hey everyone, welcome back or welcome to my little bookish channel. I am Allie. Hey, how's it going? Today we are in my backyard, which means it is January reading wrap up time. I have my books to the right of me and we're just gonna go through them. There's really no rhyme or reason. I don't know how I'm going to structure this reading wrap up because I don't know what I'm in the mood for. Should I do the books that I didn't like first and then go from there? Perhaps we shall start with that. I'll start with the books that I didn't like. In January, I read a total of 12 books, 11 books. I think it's 11. And then I'll talk about another book that I technically finished in February, as in like the 1st of February, but I'm going to just push it into January because in my head it makes sense. I don't know. Anyway, we'll talk about the 11 books that I read. In January, I feel like I mostly read fantasy this year. I didn't look at my Storygraph stats for that, but I'm pretty sure this year. I feel like I mostly read fantasy this month. Yeah, I think I mostly read fantasy this month. I should have looked at my Storygraph stats, but I didn't. Could maybe say that the next genre would be romance. So there you go. I had a really wide variety of ratings in January. I gave books 4 stars, 5 stars, 2 stars. It was just everywhere. So it was a good reading month because I read good books, but also just a very strange reading month for the start of the year. I hope that doesn't mean that 2024 is going to be characterized by its strangeness, because I don't think I can deal with that again. Anyway, let's talk about the books that I didn't like. Okay, let's start with the 2-star books, because there is more than one. If I'm looking down, it's because I'm looking at my reading journal. So the first book that I want to talk about is this one. It's Lover Eternal by J.R. Ward. So what do I say about this book that I haven't already said? Because I have an entire video where I read this book and rant to you about it. I think one of those clips, just like one clip of me talking about the 300 pages that I read, was an hour long. This book had me gagged, and not in a good way. Okay, so this is the second book in the Black Dagger Brotherhood series. It's a paranormal romance series by J.R. Ward. I read the first book, Dark Lover, last year, and I hated it, but it was the kind of hate reading that you enjoy, if that makes sense. And it's really fast, really easy, and you're just so annoyed with everything and you hate everything, but you're having so much fun hating it. So reading these books is fun. It's not a good time, but it's a fun time. This is about the character Rage with a H. He has you guessed it, rage problem. He meets a woman named Mary Luce who has her own backstory and situation that is happening with her. Rage is an atrocious romance lead. He is so bad. I don't understand how J.R. Ward was writing this book and going, oh my god, Rage is just the best character that I've ever written in so long, because it's so bad. Not that she said that, but that's what I imagined her when she was writing this. Because you have to have written this thinking that this was good, thinking that this was sexy, and it's not. It really isn't. So Rage is a vampire who is cursed to shapeshift into a dragon. So there's that. I liked the dragon aspect. I thought that was really interesting, but nothing really happens with it. It's just there. I think the way that it ended was too neat. It felt lazy. This entire book was really lazy. The intimate scenes between Mary Luce and Rage were so cringeworthy. I have read a lot of smut in my day, okay? This is some of the worst written that I have read in a really long time. So I do not recommend this at all. But you best believe that I'm going to be reading the third. You know why I want to read this series? First of all, I just want to see how many H's in names this author can possibly do, but also I want to know if her recent work, 'cause she's still publishing in this series, or she's publishing like offshoots from this series. I want to read those because I want to see if her writing has changed. I want to see if her characters have changed. I need to know if she has developed as an author. And it would be really interesting because I can't seem like, because at the time when this was being written, I feel like not a lot was being written in this space. Like that was the huge kind of time for paranormal romance back in the early 2000s. And so I'm wondering, like, when she was starting off, was she getting enough feedback, enough criticism, like constructive criticism, that would enable her to eventually develop and change the ways that she writes certain things? Or was she just like so propelled by like, oh my god, this is like so good, that she kind of just sticks to it? Because I think that's what happened with Christine Feehan. I used to love Christine Feehan, but was fully aware of how horrible her relationships were and how toxic they were and how horrible the men were. But it used to be like my guilty pleasure. But I can't read them now. Like I have a series, I think is it the Shadow, what's it called? The Shadow series?
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
That was fucking weird. I think it's the Shadow series. I don't quite remember. But I have like 1 or 2 books in that series that I haven't yet read, but I've put them in storage because I just don't know if I can read them. Christine Feehan, her formula hasn't changed. She hasn't changed as an author for however long that she has been writing. Whereas authors like Nora Roberts, I feel like she changes. Like she can be quite a formulaic author, but especially now, I feel like her stories and the way that she constructs them and her romances, if she writes romances, like they're slightly different to how she used to write. And I think change in that regard is a testament to the quality of the author. So I would like to know if J.R. Ward, if her writing has changed, if that makes sense. Like Nalini Singh, I think has definitely changed as an author, especially in her like Guild Hunter series and in her Sly Changeling series. Like if you read her early works in both those series and then compare them to now, there is a difference. I feel like there is a quality difference. So I would like to know. That's why I'm reading that. That was too long of a rant. The next book that I gave 2 stars, Poster Girl by Veronica Roth. I don't understand who this book was for. Again, I have an entire reading vlog where I read this book. I don't understand who it's for. It's advertised or promoted as adult dystopian. This isn't adult dystopian, this is young adult. You know how I would characterize this book? I'd characterize this book as maybe not lazy, but so unfulfilling. It is so unfulfilling. It does absolutely nothing. Like it is a nothing book. It does nothing. It does nothing. It tries to be a dystopian, tries to look at like the aftermath, like what happens when the revolution wins? What happens to the people who were active in that regime or who were complicit in that regime? Like what happens next? But it doesn't really do that. It doesn't do it in a way that I think this needed to be done. If it is an adult, if it's oh my god, I can't speak. If it is an adult dystopian, there could have been so much exploration into these very deep themes. Like you'd have to have care. There'd have to be a deliberateness. That wasn't here. It was so stupid, to be perfectly honest. I would never recommend this book. I'm just so sad. Like I'm just a bit saddened because Veronica Roth wrote the Divergent series. I've never read that series, but a lot of people loved it. I might read it for a future video, possibly. But this just nothing. This was a nothing, nothing. I'm not going to talk about what this is about because I've spoken about it for so long in my specific reading vlog. But basically the main character is asked to find a missing child named Grace Ward. This is a young girl who was, as a toddler, taken from her family and rehomed. She was essentially kidnapped, right? And then they decide that they want the main character to try and find her. It's basically for optics. Like, it's just the, what's that word? It's the publicity surrounding having this main character, a main character who was the literal poster child. She was the face on all the posters for the regime, to be seen to be doing something that if she would succeed, she would be free because she's technically a prisoner. It's so stupid because, yeah, that happens, but it doesn't at the same time. There's no real effort to consider like the people that she calls friends, the people that she grew up with, that she like loves in the prison, did horrible, horrible things to other people in the name of the regime that they still believe in. They still believe that they were doing good. There was no real effort to try and deconstruct some of that. Like, there are parts that, yes, she's like, oh, I can understand that it was horrible for most people, but for me it wasn't. And she was trying to reflect on that tension and the fact of like of her own privilege, but I don't think it's done in a way that actually is meaningful. So did not like this, gave it 2 stars. I don't think I would read anything from this author that she publishes in the future, unfortunately. You know what? We're in the dystopian mood. Let's go to the next dystopian. In the same video where I read Poster Girl by Veronica Roth, in a really strange turn of fate, I also read The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. Now, this is the sequel to The Handmaid's Tale that no one asked for. Okay, let me just tell it to you straight. Is this objectively a good book? Yes, objectively it is. However, was it necessary? Hell no, it wasn't. I think the beauty of The Handmaid's Tale, it's really hard to say I really liked The Handmaid's Tale because it's just so like dark, but we'll just say the beauty, the horror also of The Handmaid's Tale is in the way it's written, but I think also in the way it ended. I liked that ending. I thought it was perfect for what the story was doing. Just like, we never know, but we can hope. And it was the hope that I think was so great. The hope is, well, there's still hope here, but it's like she had to tie every single loose end when it wasn't really necessary. But objectively, it was good. I gave it, I think, like 3.5 stars. I liked that we were able to finally get Aunt Lydia's perspective, because I think Aunt Lydia is fascinating. She was fascinating. She always was fascinating. It was just really great. We have 2 other perspectives of Daisy and Agnes, and I won't talk about who they are, but they are connected to the first book. I think those 2 perspectives, although interesting in some regards, I think we could have just had only Aunt Lydia's story and it would have been better. This book is too long. There was too much happening. It wasn't super interesting enough that I wanted to continue reading. Like, there was just so many things happening that needed to be just stopped. Like, there was too much noise. Needed to quieten down. And we needed to focus. I think that was my biggest like criticism of this. Was this Booker worthy? No. Absolutely not. I don't understand why this, actually no, I can understand why. It's more of like a legacy thing, right? Like, the Booker Prize shouldn't be honouring authors, it should be honouring specific works, because specific works are being nominated and like long-listed and shortlisted. Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo should have won completely by itself. The fact that this tied, yeah, no, absolutely not. Okay, so that's that one. Let's then talk about the next 3.5 star that I gave. When I Sing Mountains Dance by Irene Sola. Now, I think I've spoken about this book quite a lot, especially over on my Instagram. I have like a full review, like written review there, as well as on my Goodreads. This was good. That's why I gave it 3.5 stars. It was unique and refreshing to read, but the first half was infinitely better than the second half. The second half really made this fall flat in the end. I almost wish that this was marketed as a short story collection. I feel like people would go into this a bit more understanding of what this is supposed to be. Short stories with the running thread of one particular family, because it feels a bit too disconnected to be a coherent story. But I liked that you have chapters from the perspective of clouds and of animals and mushrooms, and I wish that was just continued and maintained. I feel like even the author kind of was just like, ugh, towards the end. What I did like was so good. That's why it's more than a 3, but slightly less than a 4. There are quotes in here that I really resonated with, and I thought they were just so beautiful. But just the overall experience of this book left me slightly unsatisfied. Would I read from this author again? Yes, I definitely would. Would I recommend it? I don't know. Like, if you're in the mood for a short book, like, it's fine. Like, I only gave it 3.5 stars because of the parts of the story that were really interesting, really unique, and how beautiful the writing was in some like areas. But at the same time, I don't know if the ending, if the feeling that I had at the end is something that I would recommend, if that makes sense. So you choose what you want to do. Well, then I'll just quickly talk about the only non-fiction book that I read. No, not the only non-fiction book. One of the non-fiction books I read in January. I read The Wager by David Gran. Now, I gave this 3 stars, and before you come at me, when I started this book, I really enjoyed it. It is a type of nonfiction that is slightly out of my comfort zone because it's about a topic that I really don't necessarily have that much interest in. It's about the Wager, a ship that was shipwrecked, and things happened as a result of the regiment people on the ship, I don't know what you call them, that were like stranded on this island. But in order to get there, you have to obviously read through the context, and it was the context that I was slightly bored by, but like not really, because I do have to hand it to David Gran. He knows how to write a story. Like, he knows how to write a story. And is it dramatic and slightly over-exaggerated? Maybe, but I'm not a historian to be able to say that. You know, he says some things and I'm just like, how does he know that that's what that person was feeling at that particular time? Like, I don't know. It was just, there were some parts that I was like, But like, overall, the story was, you know, well thought out. It flowed in a way that made sense. And I get it and I can appreciate it, but it's just not for me. However, I think this kind of non-fiction would be one that is the most easily recommended for a general audience. Like, if you know someone who even like slightly is fascinated by anything about the sea, or maybe like military history, or just history in general, like, this would be a really good gift. You know what I mean? Like, I think David Gran is a good book to give to people if you have no idea what to give them, because I feel like his non-fiction works are quite like there's a bit of variety. Would I read David Gran again? Of course I would. I want to read Killers of the Flower Moon. The Lost City of Z sounds interesting. Like, I think I want to continue reading him, but I don't know if necessarily like this was topic that was for me, but it would be for so many other people. I had a good time reading it. There were parts of it that I was bored. It's a very long book. It felt like 800 pages, but it wasn't, but it felt like it. And at one point I'm like, can we just end the story, because this has taken so fucking long. But anyway, that's just me. I feel like I've been much more impatient over the last few months with books than I typically am. So is that growth? I don't know. I don't know if that's a good thing. Then let's talk about a book that I have already spoken about at length, because I've done a YouTube short review about it, and I spoke about it in the video, like the reading vlog where I read this entire trilogy. And I finished The Amber Spyglass, which is the 3rd book in the His Dark Materials trilogy by Phillip Pullman. I love this trilogy. I love this trilogy so much. This is going to stay with me for the rest of my life. It is like in terms of the story in my head, but also just this book. I'm going to reread it over and over again. Like, the love I have for this trilogy, oh, it's immense. It's immense. I love it. Haven't stopped thinking about it. The Amber Spyglass I liked, but I felt slightly unsatisfied in some regard. And I think maybe my expectations after reading The Subtle Knife, which is my favourite in this series, was so high that it would make sense that the Amber Spyglass fell slightly flat to that. I just thought that the battle and the way that Metatron died and just everything kind of happened too quickly. I was left a bit reeling, and I don't know, I wanted the care and the build up that we got in the Northern Lights and in The Subtle Knife that I don't think was there in the Amber Spyglass. But I gave it 4 stars. Still a pretty good book. I love this trilogy. I already want to reread it. I'm thinking of maybe rereading this in winter, when it's winter here, either this year or next year, because I think reading this in winter, if I am lucky enough to go on a little holiday with my mum and my dog, I hope we go somewhere that is very wintry, maybe even like around snow here in Victoria. I think this would be so perfect. It would be so perfect. Oh my god. That's what I kind of want to do, but we'll see. But that's The Amber Spyglass by Phillip Pullman. Let's just go to the next 4-star, I guess. I feel like 4 stars is mainly what January would be characterized by, or defined by, I should say. The next book that I gave 4 stars is a collection of short stories. It's The Imitation of the Rose by Clarice Lispector. Oh my god. It's my first Clarice Lispector foray into her writing. Oh my god. Did most of these go over my head? Yes. I feel like you need to study these. I actually, even after finishing some of these stories, I read essays about them because I was just like, I am so blown away by her writing and the way that her mind works that I need someone to tell me what I just read and why. So good. This is so good. I think this collection of stories were originally published under the title Family Ties, but now it's Imitation of the Rose. My favourite short stories in this is The Imitation of the Rose, Family Ties, and maybe Beauty and the Beast or the Enormous Wound. I've dog-eared The Departure of the Train and Report on the Thing and The Egg and the Chicken, which just really hurt my brain. This was amazing. The Imitation of the Rose, the titular story. Holy shit. It was written, I think, as a response or influenced by The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. And you can definitely tell it is amazing. It is just so amazing, so gothic, so weird. So much is happening, so much is being told, so much is being commentated on. And that is a theme that is throughout this entire short story collection. I love Clarice Lispector. I need to read other works from her. If you have read Clarice Lispector and you have any recommendations upon where to go from here, please let me know. That would be super cool of you. But I love this. I loved this so much. I'm really happy also that I got to a short story collection in January because I love short story collections, but I haven't been reading as many. So I'm trying to rectify that this year. I would like to read at least one a month, but we shall see. Anyway, the next 4 stars I gave was Iris Kelly Doesn't Date by Ashley Herring Blake, which rhymes. This is the 3rd book in the Bright Falls trilogy. It's a sapphic romance contemporary series. I love this series. I think it is adorable and gorgeous, and anything sapphic I am here for. I liked this. I really did. I thought the tension was great. The sexual tension was great. The build-up of the relationship was great. I wish there were more time spent of them actually being in a relationship, but it's just good. Fake dating trope if you want it. It's there. I just didn't like the way that our main characters were treated. Iris's family, horrible to her, especially her mother. Oh my god. Iris's mother is so nasty to her, and so mean, I should say, and everyone takes it as a joke, but it doesn't, it hurts Iris so much, and it fundamentally alters the way that she understands herself. It's just so sad. And I got so angry, and I just wish that there was a point in the story where the mother and like the family was confronted, but there wasn't. It was slightly strange. Stevie, the romance lead, who I love Stevie. She is like one of my favorite romance leads in this series. I think she's my favorite after Delilah and Claire. One of my favorite characters in this series. Stevie's ex is also her best friend, Adria, and I disliked Adria quite a lot. Just the way that she treats Stevie, it kind of comes off as, I don't want to say gaslighty, but it's more like such intense condescension, as though Stevie can't do anything herself. And the way that Stevie also is treated by Adria when she's with Iris is not good. Her friends act as though Stevie's not an adult. And although there is a conversation at the end where Stevie kind of talks to her friends like, hey, I am an adult. I know that I really do like lean on you when I have really bad days, because she has generalized anxiety disorder. She goes, but that doesn't mean that I don't know my own mind, that I don't know what I want from my life. And that does happen, but it's happened so briefly. Maybe I'm just a petty bitch. I just felt like there needed to be more of an apology, especially by Adria, with how she treated and talked to Stevie and how she treated and talked to Iris. But that didn't happen. And I also find it, I don't know, it was just, so they fake date for a while and they become friends, but they're fake dating. Then they actually are in a relationship, like officially, for 6 weeks. And after the 6 weeks, because obviously there's a third act conflict, which the third act conflict is also an issue that I had, because I just think it was so stupid. Just communicate and be adults and just like sit down and like talk about it. But one of the aspects of this third act conflict was that they didn't really talk about the possibility of a long distance relationship. Or Stevie's like, well, like move with me to New York City. And it's like, first of all, how is that even an option? You've been together for 6 weeks. Anyway, but like just talk. Just talk about it. Just talk about it instead of running. And it was so frustrating. But everything else was adorable. I still think the first book in this series is the best book in this series, which is kind of a shame, but I will eat up every single thing that Ashley Herring Blake writes for like adult romance readers. I will read everything. I will purchase and pre-order everything, because I just really still enjoy the story and the characters. So there you go. I really liked this. This is The City of Stardust by Georgia Summers. I'm not going to talk much about this in the next book, because I'm going to have an entire reading vlog where I read these books. Oh my god, so adorable. So this is about a girl who is part of a family line that owes a debt to a very powerful woman named Penelope. And this Penelope woman is actually from kind of a different world. It's like a portal fantasy. I think it is heavily influenced by his Dark Materials. I really liked it. I did. The main character, whose name escapes me, Violet. Violet is basically bargained as part of this debt to Penelope, and if she can't find her mother in 10 years, well, this is to her brothers, but she finds out eventually and tries to figure out if she can find her mother as well. If Penelope doesn't have Violet's mother by the 10-year deadline, then she will take Violet. I really liked the fact that Violet, when she found out, stood on her own and said to her uncles, like, I am going to find my mother. I'm going to do as much as I can to. And she just sets off. Like, she had a plan and she tried as much as she could to fulfill it. She wasn't necessarily successful, but that's what the story kind of centers around. She's basically following in the footsteps of her mother and trying to see if she can catch up. She never does. And I didn't really necessarily like the time jumps that we had. This book feels like it has slightly high stakes, but at the same time it doesn't. I don't want to call it a cozy fantasy, but I think it does lean into that. It is a story where the main character kind of just meanders and tries to find her mum, never really does, finds out about herself and finds out about Penelope finds out about it, the curse on her family line, and it's just her going from point A to point B to point C and like following the clues. And along the way she meets a boy named Alexander, who is the assistant to Penelope, and Alexander was precious. He is a boy that was taken when he was very, very young from an orphanage by Penelope, essentially groomed to be her assistant, and she manipulates him, she abuses him emotionally and physically. And I apologise for the dog barking, but I am outside. And I think Georgia Summers did well, actually, in detailing the effects of that on Alexander and just his struggles. And he betrays Violet, but he does so because of the fact that Penelope is everything to him. She is the hope for his future as a scholar in this world called Fidelis, and he also views her as his mother because that's what she basically was and is. And it's just, I think Georgia Summers really tries to construct his story quite carefully. I don't think Violet understands. I don't think Violet understands Alexander's position, but towards the end I think she does a little bit, slightly. The ending is open-ended. It is a slight romance, but don't read this for that because it is on the periphery. This reminds me of like Gallant by V.E. Schwab, in that there is a plot, there is a story, but it's slow building, kind of feels meandering because she's traveling a lot, and you do eventually get to the point and you understand what is happening and why this has been happening to this family, and it's good, but you can tell it is a debut. But I'm looking forward to what Georgia Summers writes next. I would definitely give this a go. I remember when I first started reading it, it gave me Emily Wilde vibes, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies vibes, even though the stories are vastly different. And honestly, I would consider Emily Wilde to have a bit of a faster pace to this, but it is interesting. And I am pretty sure it is heavily influenced by his Dark Materials. They call angels astrals in this. It's good, it's engaging, and I don't think you would necessarily have a bad time with this because it's just exactly what it says on the tin. You know what I mean? But this was good. I really enjoyed it. And then the next book that I read, Faebound by Sarah Al Arifi. I don't know what I was expecting when I read this, but it wasn't what I got. And that is both a good thing and slightly a negative thing. I felt like this was the first book in a series, which it definitely is. And it felt so much like the first in the series, but it also felt like a standalone. And I don't know how those two can be true at once. I don't. But anyway, Faebound is about two sisters, Irene and Lettel. Irene is the colonel to the military of her Alvan tribe. She's part of the Waning tribe. The Waning tribe has been at war with the Crescent tribe for like hundreds of years over a part of that's like in the middle of both their territories. It's basically like a mine, and this mine has the element Fradia, and this is basically like gold. Like it literally is like if you have Fradia, you have power. It is not their currency, but it is kind of, because Fradia can, like a small like stone of it can grow the plants for a family for like the rest of their lives, or like it can power their house for the rest of their lives. Like it's just so important as an element and as a source. So that's what the war is about, and Irene has been in that war since she was a kid. Lettel is her sister. She's a diviner, so she uses the entrails of a particular type of magical beast that I forgot the name of. The creature is called an obia. So Lettel is a diviner. She's able to prophesize the future using the entrails of an obia. An obia are these kind of like oxes or like stags, I'm not too sure. they're magical beings, and you find out why they're magical beings, and it completely turns Irene and Letel's understanding of their world on its head. So they're elves. Something happens. Irene is exiled. Letel follows her, and so does Rayan. Rayan is a captain under Irene. He goes with them, basically, because he feels guilty as to the reason why Irene was exiled. So they keep on walking. They eventually find themselves prisoners of the Fae. Now, the Fae, elves and humans used to live, but Fae haven't been seen for like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and humans are thought to have been extinct. So when Irene and Letel and Rayan come across the Fae, they're so confused. They have no idea why they exist, because everyone thought that they were just a folk, like they were just legends, because no one has seen them for that long. You have them as prisoners of the Fae. The Fae can't leave a specific area because they were cursed by the last human to not be able to leave this area, because according to everyone's record of history, including the Fae got jealous of how humans were able to use their magic and access their magic, that the Fae destroyed them, except for one human named Afa. Afa found out ways that even the Fae have no idea how he learned, pertaining to how he could use his magic, and he curses all of the Fae. So that's basically like the history of the world that we're in. Something happens. Irene bonds with an Obia. An Obia is very significant in the Fae culture. So everyone's like, how did she, an elf, bond with an Obia? Like, it's never been heard of. And so things happen. There is a slight romance with Irene and the princess. It is queer because Irene is queer. Rayan and Letel, there is a romance there. I didn't necessarily like that romance. I thought that there wasn't necessarily a lot of tension there. My issue with this, and it wasn't really an issue because I still enjoyed it, is that it doesn't feel... Samantha Shannon called this a romantic fantasy of epic proportions. No, I don't think so. It was good, but it's not to that level. It was really good, but I don't think I would recommend... I don't think I would read the rest of the series. We have a few points where Irene kind of reflects on the war and on her chieftain. Now, her chieftain is a woman that Irene respects, and they were also lovers for quite a while. And Irene, as a result, is quite blinded to her flaws, whereas Letel tries so hard to talk to Irene about it, and Letel like hates the chieftain, hates what she stands for, hates the fact that the war is still going on. The chieftain was the one who instituted the child soldier policy, like really things that make you think that she is not all she seems, or that there is more than just, we need to protect our tribe. It's actually, no, you just want the power that will come with having access to that much Freydia. Although there are a few times that Irene reflects on this as not a lot, I wish there was a point where Irene kind of stops and realizes, hey, actually, what are we doing? And maybe at the end she does slightly, but I wish that was just much more stronger. The ending, there was a part that I kind of was anticipating something, but I wasn't anticipating that. I thought it was a good ending, and it felt like a good closure, to be honest. Like, I feel like if Sarah Alarifi, never writes the rest of this trilogy, it'll be fine. Because I think it ended in a quite a good way. But I guess there are still a little bit of, there are still loopholes. I just don't know if I'm interested enough to care. I don't know how to explain it. I was waiting for that moment where it felt like a high stakes situation, or just like that type of momentum and energy that comes with reading fantasy that is like this, you know, like there is really good foundations of a world, you know, the type of world building that you hope to see in like epic fantasy. There is the foundations of that, right? But I just wish that we had more of this type of really like intense, cool, magical fantasy, punchy type of story, because that's what I was expecting. But instead it was much more sedate, which isn't an issue, but I think it was just my expectations needed to be changed slightly. It was much more sedate. There is like an enemies to lovers situation, but it's a lot more about trying for like Yiren Little and Rayan trying to figure out their position in this Fae society. I don't know, there was a lot of high hopes for this, and I just don't think it necessarily reached that point that I was hoping that it would reach. But I liked the queer rep, I liked the disability rep, I just wanted a bit more of a punchy fantasy. It was kind of just like a 4-star solid read. And then we'll just talk about the book that I'm going to consider was a January book, because I technically finished it like just on the 1st of February, and that's The Exteriors by Annie Ernaux. I read this for Annuary, which is the Read Good Challenge that is like hosted and created by Ben Reads Good here on YouTube and on Instagram. I really liked this. I read it as an audiobook, a very quick read. It's a collection of, I'm going to call them stories, even though this is non-fiction, because the main character, our narrator, is the author. And it's her observations of people in France, and just like she's people watching and she's imagining these different lives, but she's also commentating on womanhood, position of women, on women of different cultures, of France. Excuse the change of scenery. My phone completely died and I had no idea until I finished filming. Anyway, back to The Exteriors by Annie Ernaux. Yes, commentating on French society, on the government, on just life, writing, imagination, creativity. It was wonderful, and I am definitely looking forward to reading more of her work. If you have any recommendations of Annie Ernaux novels or books or whatever to read, please, I would be very grateful. Let me know. And then let's talk about the book that I gave 5 stars to, the only book that I gave 5 stars in the month of January, and it is, no surprise, it's Rouge. It is Rouge by Mona Awad. I love this book. I love Mona Awad. This was so weird, like all of her books, so disconnected to reality. The main character is so in the depths of her grief that we don't know what is real, what isn't. It's just so good. It is so good. It is foggy, misty, hazy, all those words that mean the same thing. That is what this book is. You have no idea where the book is going. You can't see it. It is so well written. I think this is very fairy tale-esque, very gothic. I think that the writing of this, like the language that is used, is very similar to Bunny, but the vibe of this book is more similar to All's Well. I feel like Rouge and All's Well lean into the fairy tale more than Bunny did. So I think that if you loved Bunny but didn't like All's Well, I don't know if you would like this. This is much more slow. It is a story about a woman trying to deal with her grief as well as her regret in regards to her mother, set in like this very fairy tale. Is it fantastical or is it not? Like, can we trust? Is she like a trusted narrator? Is she unreliable? do we actually understand what's going on? That's the vibe of this. So if that's not your vibe, don't read it. You will not enjoy it. But holy moly, did I love this. I think what I loved most about it was that foggy quality and how everything that happens in this, if you dig deep enough, if you want to dig deep, it's about something. Like there is, how about that? A book about something. I mean, in terms of like commentating, in terms of it being a critique of something or being a metaphor for something. Like you could argue this entire thing is just a metaphor for depression and grief and a young woman trying to deal with her trauma of her youth. Or it's about this girl who gets in a cult of these mystical-esque beings who use mirrors to plant seeds and wait for you to come to the spa and to let your trauma be released or sucked into a jellyfish so that you can become incredibly beautiful, and so the jellyfish and the trauma that is within this jellyfish can be eaten by these mystical beings. Or is that what happened? Like, I just think Mona Awad is doing really cool things that I'm very happy that I enjoy it. Like, I'm really happy that she is an author for me. And that is the end of the video, actually. As always, take care and stay safe. Like and subscribe if you so choose to. I will see you sometime next week if I'm not absolutely exhausted from work. We shall see. Bye, friends. I will see you next week.